Vasily Grossman, a Russian Jew, said, "Show me what you accuse the Jews of, and I'll tell you what you are guilty of." Well, that has never been more true in the whole Israel-Palestine conflict and debate that the whole world is bizarrely focused on. I say bizarrely because there's so many other more bloody and deadly conflicts, not just in the rest of the world, but even in the Middle East itself. And we just found out recently that the UN have actually revised their numbers of casualties in Gaza down by half, which makes Israel's surgical precision unprecedented in the history of urban warfare. But what I want to do with you, and I created a list, is to explore this particular quote of Grossman, where he says, "Show me what you accuse the Jews of, and I'll show you what you are guilty of." Because I want to go through every single accusation that Israel faces, and we'll see how it's the other side, the enemies of Israel, who are guilty of the thing they accuse the Jews of. Because it's absolutely enlightening and shocking at the same time. Let's go through them. The first one, genocide. They say that the Jews are committing genocide in Gaza. Well, actually, since the early stages of the Palestinian cause, its intention was very clear. From Hajj Amin al-Husseini to the Hebron massacre in the late 1920s, before Israel even became a state, and certainly when Israel declared independence, before the great displacement occurred of the Arabs. The plan was, we cannot permit a Jewish state. We cannot permit Jewish self-determination, Jewish security, all these things. That's genocide. That's wanting to see the Jewish people fall. The Jewish people were displaced from their indigenous homeland 2,000 years ago. They wandered the earth for 2,000 years. Everywhere they go, pretty much says, "You're not welcome here," sooner or later. So they say, fine, well, let's go back to our homeland. And then they turn around and say, no, you can't even have a sliver of land there in your indigenous homeland. Again, the Arab war to annihilate the Jews took place before the displacement occurred. It's not like the Jews came there and displaced all the Arabs and they said, oh, no, we can't have that. That's not fair. No, the displacement occurred after they tried to annihilate the Jewish state, which was very happy to live among Arabs. So whether it's the early stages of the anti-Israel Arab cause, or whether it's today with Hamas and what they did on October 7th, they went after every man, woman and child to behead, burn, rape, mutilate. That's genocide. What about ethnic cleansing? Again, Israel has always said since her inception, we're happy to live among Arabs. We don't want to displace them. We don't need to displace them if they're happy to live among us. The proof being 20% of Israel's population are Israeli Arabs, who by and large are pretty cooperative with Israel and happy to live there, and certainly wouldn't want to live in some kind of future Palestinian state, God forbid. They know it's just going to be another third world failed state, just like Lebanon, Egypt. So this term ethnic cleansing, the only times where you've had the displacement, you've had Israel having to fight back and do what they're doing in Gaza as in response to those trying to ethnically cleanse them, to genocide Israel, to get rid of Israel. Israelis don't want to do any of this stuff. We don't want to go to war. We don't want to have checkpoints. We don't want to have blockades. We don't want to have any of these things. We're forced into it for our very survival. And the great irony is that whenever the Arabs have had control over elements of the land, that's when the ethnic cleansings happened. In Jordan, when the Jordanians took control of Judea and Samaria, or what they termed the West Bank, or Egypt when they controlled Gaza, it was ethnically cleansed of Jews between 1948 and 1967. And today, Israel's told they can't build settlements in Judea and Samaria, the ancient biblical homeland. Why? Well, because it might be part of a future Palestinian state. And so what? Arabs live in Israel. Why can't Jews live in a future Palestinian state? And surely that would be the only kind of state that would be one that Israel could make peace with, one that's going to allow Jews to live there. No, Jews can't live there. It's going to be Judenrein. And the Palestinian territories are Judenrein. And yet the world is perfectly comfortable with it and accepts it. No issues. By the way, you have apartheid in other parts of the Arab world. The Jews were ethnically cleansed from all the surrounding Arab countries pretty much, by and large, in 1948. There were more refugees, more displaced Jews than there were Arabs displaced in 1948. But we don't hear about them because Israel resettled them in Israel. That's ethnic cleansing. That's real ethnic cleansing. But for some reason, Israel is considered the ethnic cleanser when she does just what she does in order to survive, to kill the terrorists, to kill those who wish to do her harm. Same thing with apartheid. I was just in Israel last week. Walking down the streets of the beach of Tel Aviv, you see people of all colours. Whether they're Jews, by the way, Jews come in all colours and races, or you have Arabs, Israeli Arabs living there, and Druze. You have Christians and Muslims and Jews and Hindus and all faiths and atheists living in peace and side by side in cooperation. Apartheid, well, that's in, as I said, the areas controlled by the PA, the Palestinian Authority. That won't have any Jews there. You know, they have signs that say in the Palestinian, as you enter the Palestinian areas, they say that Israelis enter at your own risk. And it says you could die. Your lives are at risk. But no, the Jews are doing the apartheid. Then my favourite one, colonialists, your colonizers. The Jews. The Jews are now the ones who are colonizing the land, stealing the land from the indigenous Palestinians, the indigenous Arabs. Jews are the colonial settlers. Well, open Wikipedia. That's all I can say. Look at the history of this land. There's only ever been one type of sovereign state in this land, and that's been a Jewish one. Whether it was 2,000 years ago, the former kingdoms of Israel and Judah, and then today, since 1948, the re-establishment of that Jewish sovereign state. Other than that, it was just controlled by colonial entities. It was never a Palestinian state. The word Palestine was adopted by the Romans. They renamed the land of Judah and Judea. They renamed it Palestine. Why? In order to sever the connection. And they had it between the Jews and the land, and they had a very good impact, by the way, because many people seemed to buy this notion, and the Arabs jumped on the term as a cynical ploy to get rid of Israel, but they don't care about Palestinian nationalism. They consider themselves Arabs, and that's what it's all about. So the colonization thing is ridiculous. No, the Arabs in the land are the colonial settlers. From, I think, around the 7th century, that's when you had the Islamic conquest of the land. They just became the next in line of the various people that conquered, various empires and imperial powers that conquered the land. But the Jews always maintained a presence there, even though most of us were scattered since the Romans exiled us. But we began returning there legally, through legal purchases, and re-established our homeland there. That's decolonization. That's the indigenous people returning to their land. By the way, as I said, Jews are perfectly happy to live alongside Arabs and non-Jews in the land, as long as they don't want to try and kill you. I don't think that's too high a bar for citizenship. Then they say that Israel's targeting civilians. I mean, this is just observably not the case, given the fact that we see that Israel has had the most surgical, precise targeting of Hamas in Gaza, where they're moving out massive swathes of the population out of harm's way. Even now in Rafah, they've been creating a refugee spot for them. By the way, this has been at the cost of Israeli lives, and I'm not even so sure that this is something I support. Israeli lives should have to be sacrificed in order to protect enemy civilians, most of which, according to recent polling, want all the Jews dead. Now, yes, they've been brainwashed, and yes, they're under the oppressive rule of Hamas, but that's what they say they want, and frankly, every society has some level of responsibility to affect change in the society they live in, and to resist, or at the very least to turn yourselves in to Israel, to the IDF. I know that if my government, or if my people were represented by tyrants, by evil people, I would feel a deep sense of responsibility to do something about it, and certainly to call it out. So Israel, no, is not targeting civilians. They've had the highest level of precision with regard to terrorist to civilian ratio in the history of urban warfare. And as I said, the UN have actually just revised their figures recently of the death toll by almost half. So that makes Israel's level of unprecedented precision even greater. Meanwhile, it has been Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, and all those who have sought to destroy Israel from its inception that have not cared about soldier or civilian. They just want to get rid of the Jews and the Jewish state, which grants security to all the civilians of the nation of Israel, of the Jewish people. We saw what they did on October 7th, going after man, woman, and child, even animal. We saw them targeting dogs in some of the kibbutzim. That's targeting civilians. And then they say one of the anti-Israel tropes that the Arabs use is they say the Jews aren't really a people. So therefore, if you're not a people, people don't have a land. People need a land. But you're not a people, you're just a religion. Religions aren't entitled to a land. Well, actually, it's the opposite. The Jews have always been a people. We had a common land, language, and culture. That's where we begun our story. In the land of Israel, speaking Hebrew. Our culture and our values all stemming from the written Torah. And we've carried that with us for centuries. And the Torah that we carry with us calls ourselves a nation. Yisrael, the nation of Israel. We absolutely are a people. And meanwhile, like what I said at the start, they are what they accuse you of. The whole Palestinian nation, that concept, is a lie. They're not really a people. They're Arabs. And the Arabs that came up with this concept of Palestinian nationhood, they admitted, the leaders both past and present admitted it's just a cynical ploy to get rid of Israel. They want to be part of the greater Arab world. That's what the Arabs wanted when they launched existential wars against Israel in 48 and 67 and 73. There wasn't some great plan of creating a Palestinian state then. No, we'll just all take bits of the land for ourselves. Doesn't matter, we're all Arabs. So again, they are what they accuse you of. Then they say that Israel's dehumanizing Palestinians. Well, it's actually the other way around. Israel has tried to a fault to secure peace and to live in peace and to do what they can to just have harmony with the Arabs. Meanwhile, from the get-go, it has been the Arab nations and the Palestinian cause that has sought to dehumanize the Jews. Just look at what they found in Gaza, in the textbooks, in the kids' toddler books, what they show on kids' TV, what the media say, what their leaders say. They dehumanize the Jews constantly. It's throughout their society. The IDF said they found many copies of Mein Kampf in people's homes. Weapons everywhere. A culture of violence and death that absolutely dehumanized the Jews, considers them to be basically equivalent to the devil. Apes and pigs. No. They are what they accuse the Jews of. And lastly, perhaps the most grotesque accusation of all, that the Jews are the new Nazis. Well, actually, what the Nazis did was the last straw in a 2,000-year exile that led the world to say, you know what, okay, maybe you can have a sovereign state, you can re-establish your homeland. We'll accept that. Because we had a moment of sympathy. That seems to have gone now, but we had a moment of sympathy. And now, when the Jewish people face from the Arab world a similar Nazi-like call to get rid of this re-established Jewish state, to stop the Jews from having any sense of self-determination and security and an ability to protect themselves, they say that you, in doing what you need to do to defend yourself, you are acting like a Nazi. How cruel and twisted and perverse is that? It's very Nazi-like, actually, because the Nazis were very clever at playing these psychological games with the Jews to try and tear them apart, to try and demoralize them. No, from the river to the sea. In fact, the whole cause of the Palestinians, it's been very similar to what Hitler set out to do, which is to basically eliminate the Jewish people, or at least any chance they have of long-term survival or success or being able to thrive or live in peace and dignity. They are what they accuse us of. It's amazing. Truth becomes lies, and lies become truth. Well, here on JTV, we share the truth. And if you agree with what I've said in this video, please do like the video, please comment, please share. Do what you can to get the message out there, because the world needs to hear this. Hi, thank you so much for watching. To watch another one, click here. To stay up to date with all our content, click here to subscribe. And if you're able to, you can help support JTV to grow and grow by clicking join below this video, where you can become a member and get perks including early access to videos and private live discussions with me. But most of all, you'll be partnering with us on our mission to change the world.